So when we talk about gamification, right? When I started working full time, and I've worked a number of blue team and intel roles, I realized that the real thing when you get to blue team side is actually just a game. You win when you can protect your data. You lose when someone ransoms you and steals your data. That's it. It's just a game natively. And we do a lot of that because we have fun doing it and we try to win. And so what our game does is we really lean on that natural gamified aspect of it by just giving people interesting data and telling cool stories along with the data.
Who says tech can't be human?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. What a start it's been to this year. When I first got into cybersecurity, it was 2010. And back then I was able to take in all the things, all the news in the space, and I was able to meet all of the leaders and all of the innovators, and I'd have hours to spend with them at any given conference that I go to. But things have changed. The industry has grown a lot, and we've gotten a lot more people, and there's an abundance of companies along with their solutions and along with their services. My first start in the game was working at Booz Allen Hamilton. There were so few people in the space that they were willing to hire this 19-year-old kid with a CCNA certification to be an intrusion engineer. And get this, in this role, I was an offensive operator. I was contracted to work for the DoD, and my job was to break things on behalf of the United States government. I see a lot of people on LinkedIn claiming that cybersecurity needs this type of skill and this type of person and more diversity. The only thing that people and companies need to worry about in cyber is giving someone an opportunity. All you gotta do is hire someone. There's never been a person that I met that cannot learn. Cybersecurity, I will admit, it comes with a lot of challenges. Sometimes, depending on the role, it might come with a lot of pressures. But again, I've never met someone that doesn't have challenges or pressures in areas outside of work. I bring all this up because of how much money and opportunity there is floating around in the space. I believe it's our job collectively to spread this equity. Here's how I know there's a lot of money and a lot of opportunity in the space. I was just reading this article on Security Week by Edward Kovacs, and it's titled Cybersecurity M&A Roundup, 37 Deals Announced in December 2024. Some merger and acquisition deals, they don't mention the amount of money or stock that was used to buy the company. But in this article, out of the 37, the ones that were mentioned about the amount that they were acquired for or merged for was more than $1.7 billion. December is supposed to be a slow month because we're all trying to bounce back from Thanksgiving and prepare for Christmas, but that didn't slow down the cyber industry from exchanging $1.7 billion in M&A deals. Many of these companies, they had some very seasoned experts, don't get me wrong, but they all started somewhere. Some of them were like me, that 19-year-old kid that someone gave a chance to. In fact, someone that was somewhat of a mentor to me was part of this M&A roundup for December. His name is Fred Fry. He was the founder of Snap Attack. When I worked at Booz Allen back all those years ago, he was a threat hunter, and along the way, for the younger generation, he was always dropping gems, ideas, and he even created multiple CTFs to help up-level and upskill the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners. The most notable deal in December was Cylance. And I'm not sure if y'all remember, but back in 2018, BlackBerry, they bought Cylance for $1.4 billion in cash. In December, Arctic Wolf, they acquired Cylance for just $160 million. It's a considerable amount still, don't get me wrong, but what happened to all the value? When you think of a company or a brand, the value lies in the people. Also, the perception of your brand and how well your product work is a representation of your people. After BlackBerry bought Cylance, a lot of the people left and the brand and the products began to go unnoticed. All you have to do is hire and treat people right. I promise you will not lose. You will only win with that strategy. If you want to check out this full story by Security Week, the link is in the show notes or description wherever you're tuning in from. Now, without further ado, I want to bring in my special guest for today. I've been talking a lot about people and up-leveling the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners, and that's exactly what my special guest for this episode is doing. My special guest is Simeon Kakpovi. He is the founder of the KC7 Foundation. Simeon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ron.
Glad to have you on. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm sure everybody's wondering, well, what did he win? I just mentioned the DMAs and you won an award. So talk to me about the award, KC7, and also what it meant to be up on the DMA stage.
Yeah, we won the Team of the Year award at the DMAs, not this year, but actually 2 years ago in 2023. It was really our first year operating as a nonprofit, and we were really humbled to have been nominated so early on in our journey by folks who are supporters of the work that we're doing. So we won Team of the Year, and we got nominated a second time. We didn't take the win the second time, but some amazing folks who actually won it. Black Girls Hack, an amazing organization, won this year. So you should also go support them as well.
Hey.
But the DMAs are such an amazing opportunities to really meet a lot of cool people who are doing a lot of awesome work in the industry. At the KC7 Foundation, our mission is about diversifying the industry. And so being in that room and seeing so many other people who are working towards the same end and who all agree that, hey, giving other people opportunity to succeed in the cybersecurity field makes us all stronger.
Mm-hmm.
That's really heartening to know that, we're doing the right thing and there's other people who are coming along with us in the journey.
So KC7, Team of the
Yes.
Year, what's the foundation do? Like, what is your primary goal? And what was your founding story for your foundation?
Yeah, we're a bit of a weird nonprofit. So KC7 is actually a game. And it started off about 5 years ago as something that I wanted to do. The way I got into cybersecurity was I played a game also when I was in college. And it was a game that allowed me to look at what cybersecurity intrusions are like in data. And after seeing that, I was like, oh, like I heard people talk about cybersecurity intrusions and what hackers do. I'm like, yeah. Sure, it's cool. And then I saw it for myself and I was like, whoa, I got to get in on this for myself. And that changed my entire life. And since then, for the past 8 to 9 years, I've been in Blue Team doing threat hunting. But the whole time when I was in college, I was doing my internships, I was doing various jobs. I always thought if I could bring that same experience to other people, I think it could potentially change their lives as well.
Mm.
And so it started off as just a very small project of me trying to recreate that experience. And then over the years, I was able to convince more people to see the vision and to buy into creating that to other people. And so we created a nonprofit because we got to a point where we created a game that could let people experience that. And we started having these experiences over and over again where people have that moment, that moment where they realize what we're actually talking about. And we created a nonprofit to really get some resources around that to make sure that everyone's able to experience that. So it's just a free online game, and then we have a nonprofit that supports it to make sure that we're able to serve the communities that we need to serve.
Oof. I've always been curious about if gamification actually works. When I got started in cyber, it was 2010. That's when I got my first job in cyber. There was no games. It was only big textbooks. Luckily, there were some very entertaining speakers that would go to conferences and speak, and I will really latch onto those because I don't like reading. I enjoy it for the outcome, but the process of it is not my favorite.
Same way.
So what game was it that got you hooked? And, let's jump into the KC7 approach as well.
Yeah, it was called the Cyber Analyst Challenge. It was something that Lockheed Martin ran back in the day. And so what they did was they took an intrusion and they took all the logs from that intrusion, they scrubbed it, and they just gave it to all these college kids, and they say, hey, go find out what the bad guys did. And we all had no idea because we're seeing this for the first time ever, right? Because
Yep.
normally, that data is like very highly guarded, but we had a once in a lifetime chance to actually look at that in a setting. And we're like, whoa, this is so interesting. There's a whole story behind this. It almost feels like you're in a movie, right? You're like, there's actually some bad guys trying to steal the data, and you're tracing them as they're going through, and they're trying one thing and they're failing, and maybe they try something else and they're failing. And then finally they get the thing that they're supposed to get. And, in real life, you might get a chance to stop them, and you start thinking about all the possibilities and how fun it must be to do this in real life. And I was a sophomore in college when I went through this experience, and I was like, this is so freaking cool. I want to do that for sure. And so when we talk about gamification, right, when I started working full time, and I've worked a number of, blue team and intel roles, I realized that the real thing when you get to blue team side is actually just a game. I mean, technically, blue team and red team are just a game, right? You win
Definitely.
when you can protect your data. You lose when someone ransoms you and steals your data. That's it. It's just a game natively. And we do a lot of that because we have fun doing it and we try to win. And so what our game does is we really lean on that natural gamified aspect of it by just giving people interesting data and telling cool stories along with the data. So when we bring up, a new cybersecurity concept, we're not just saying, hey, go read about this arbitrarily. We expose you to it. We just kind of throw you in a deep end. We're like, here's this really maybe complex topic, but we're just going to let you interact with it as if it were a game. And the details of that topic are just the rules of the game. Just forget that you're learning and just like remember that you're trying to win this game. And
Yeah.
whatever you're learning is just an advantage in the game for you. And it's worked surprisingly well, a lot better than we thought it would.
So let's kind of like walk through it, right? You pull open one of the games. What is someone expecting to see? Like, what does that process look like, and what kind of challenges are they going to experience along the way?
Yeah, we have a lot of goofy stories, and the stories really reflect the personality of whoever's making them. So the very first one is one that I made, and it was during the time. You remember there was a rap battle between Drake and Kendrick?
Well, oh yeah, of course.
Yes. So I actually was onto it a week before when it was like in the early stages when Future and Drake were kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I made a module in which, the companies of Drake and Kendrick, right, they have this rap beef and they're essentially hacking each other's companies. And so in the midst of their
Ooh.
rap feud, we show you how each of the hackers on their side is trying to fish the other company and what happens when you click a link and then you see, okay, well, they click the link, they compromise credentials. What are they doing with those credentials? How do we look at reconnaissance that they're doing beforehand? How do we looking at what they're doing afterwards? And so you're getting all this like really technical stuff, but we're just like cracking a lot of jokes along the way. We have a really silly story that you're really captivated in, and then you don't actually remember that you're doing a lot of learning. And
Mm.
really, right, I mean, there are some pictures, there are some gifs, but a lot of the time you're just querying data. We're teaching you how to write KQL, right? So you're forming complex queries. I mean, you're using the same tools that a lot of people use in the real world, and you just don't even realize it.
That is awesome. I know that you are big in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. I think sometimes people forget that DEI is not just, black people or people in minority groups. It's the young people, especially in the
Yeah.
cybersecurity industry. I think latching on to current trends like that is just fun. It makes your job more enjoyable to learn new things and just tinker around.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that we've actually found along the way, we built a game that was for college students. And then, my co-founder Greg, his mom's a teacher, and so we had a lot of connections in the EDU space.
Mm.
And so one of our connects says, "Hey, why don't we try this with a room full of high school students?" They say, "Will it work?" We're like, "I don't know. It's supposed to be for college students," and they absolutely loved it. I mean, we couldn't even pull them away for lunch because they would like hiss at us and tell us to go away, and they wanted to work the entire way through. And then we said, well, can we try with middle schoolers? Can a fifth grader actually learn how to do blue team investigations, write Cousteau queries, understand, the cyber kill chain, MITRE ATT&CK
Mm-hmm.
in a short amount of time? And we did a summer camp where we had like these tiny kids who are like, 4 foot some your feet tall, and they're like into it, and it's a thing that they do and they love it. And that was super surprising to us. And what was more surprising is that sometimes it's the kids or the people who you don't expect to be good at it that end up being good at it. And so we have all these preconceived notions of, this person is technical or that person should be good at this. And we kind of early on shove people into boxes as to what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we've learned along the way is that if you just give people a fair chance, you don't bias them in any way, you'll find people who never would have imagined themselves as being good at the stuff, being really successful and being really good at it and loving it.
I need to jump in for a second and share some details about a special group that we've created for you, our listeners. We understand the importance of creativity in cybersecurity, and Hacker Valley has created a special Cyber Creators Mastermind. Each month, we meet and discuss how to break down technical concepts through stories, the intricacies and opportunities of using audio and video to highlight what's important in cybersecurity, and we share how you can use content to highlight the hard work that you put into your craft. You can check out the mastermind by visiting hackervalley.com/mastermind. We'd love to help unlock your creative potential and would love to see you there. When you see it, you can believe it, right? Like, I feel like if you haven't seen anybody work in cybersecurity or information technology, like, what's the incentive to go and tackle that industry besides money? I feel like that's the only thing. But when you see it and you hear someone's experience, and you start to realize, okay, this isn't just about the money. It's about like the way that I could pivot through life, my career. I had some really great mentors early on who have always like shown me that I'm doing it my way. Like, yeah, I'm gonna like work at a company and maybe level up by getting certifications, but ultimately they're creating their own path. And I think that the people like yourself that have been doing that, they have a lot more fun along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And, a big point is letting people see what it's actually like versus what their perception of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when people think about cybersecurity, especially if you're a middle schooler or you're a high schooler, you think about cybersecurity, you're like, oh, it's just a bunch of people writing code and doing math, right? And so you're like, oh, this isn't cool. But then once you actually get into it, you're like, wait a minute, this is some of the stuff I like. I'll give you one example, right? You ever heard about like Swifties and stuff?
Yeah, of
And
course.
you know, there'll be an Instagram post by Taylor Swift, and there's a scarf in the corner and it's got a certain color, and then they start using, one small detail to like look all over the internet, do extrapolations and say, well, I think the next album is going to be released on October 2 because of like these 5 details. And you're like, how did you even know that? You're like, it's just a natural skill, right? Or like people do like Instagram sleuth and that type of thing. And a lot of people aren't able to link that skill set or that interest to what a cybersecurity career could be. But in reality, right, that's what literally people on that's what people on the blue team side do, right? You take small details, you put them together and try to figure out what bad guys are doing. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you can take those things and show people that the skills and interests that they already have are well suited to an industry they didn't think they could be successful in, then you're able to identify a lot of talent, and that's how we can bring more diversity to bear in our industry.
What do you get out of this? Right, you're creating the games. You're trying to, teach the young people. What's in it for you as leading this foundation?
Yeah, I get to give back. I didn't end up in this industry by accident. There were a lot of people along the way who went out of their way to help me be where I am. When I was in college and I was doing my first challenge, we were assigned a mentor. And I remember I went to an HBCU, I went to Howard, which is back there.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, and he drove all the way he didn't have to do that. He drove all the way to campus to sit with us and to show us some of the really cool stuff that he was doing. And in my internships, I had people who went out of their way. A lot of mentors went out of their ways to like teach me stuff, to like give me guidance. And so I always think about that and how that helped me in my journey. And so now that I'm in a place where I can give back, I think it's such an important thing to do, to create. You can't just sit around and hope that diversity will magically happen,
Mm-hmm.
or hope that a world will magically happen in the way that you wish it is. You have to go out and you have to do something. And I am privileged enough to be in a place where I can go and I can make that happen. So I want to do that as much as possible. But also, it's a lot of fun to create a game and to see people play your game. So selfishly, I enjoy that too.
This reminds me of like a flywheel. Like once you start putting it in rotation, like the momentum just continues to allow the wheel to spin on its own.
Yeah.
When I first started getting into the content space, I was doing videos on Python exploitation, how to reverse engineer a CVE to ultimately generate the Python code. And you could like look at what was committed in GitHub to see exactly what the code was doing beforehand. Maybe someone left comments like, hey, if you sent it a one here instead of a zero, the application will crash. Like just looking at those clues was very fun and helpful. And I was creating videos on it. And then people started coming to me and saying, Ron, will you be my mentor? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then it got to like 10 people. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like maybe I'm not cut out for being a one-on-one mentor, but I am cut out to be a teacher. Have you experienced that? Like where now everybody wants to be your mentor now that you have this, a game and audience base?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has changed. We started off, when we started off, you could play the game by writing on paper. That's how we started. And now we have a platform that hundreds of people use it. We have about 20,000 people on there and growing. So hundreds of people a day use it. And really what we've actually tried to do is we can't be everywhere. And so what we try to do is we try to empower the groups that are actually hands on the ground doing the work, right? Blacks in Cybersecurity, Rice's organization. There's so many organizations out there that are already doing the good work, that are trying to reach the populations that we're trying to reach, that are trying to make diversity happen. They just need the thing that they can bring to their populations to help them grow, right? They already have the nurturing piece, they have the connections. And so we just try to be that thing, and we try to empower all these other organizations. And there's a lot of other organizations out there to do the cool work that they're already doing. But we've had to realize that very early on, is that, like, especially if you're not doing it full time, you can't be everything. You can't do everything. And if you try to, you might crash and burn. And so you have to work a little bit smarter in
Yeah.
terms of like the impact you're making, and just like figure out what your role is in the ecosystem.
There's a lot of young people that I speak to, my nephew being one of them, and what he hears from his friends as well. Like, just it's like a echo chamber. When you hear that something is not possible, you kind of cling on to it and you try to make that a reality. One of my favorite quotes is if you teach it, you get to learn it twice. And
Yeah.
also, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And it
Yeah.
seems like you're releasing those boundaries for many people. Like you're showing the young people that you can get into this if you don't fight against it. But also, it's like that teaching component. Because if you're able to play a game on a piece of paper, you take that paper, you can show your friends. I think like
Yeah.
card games are so infectious because you get to put them in your pocket and then, delight someone else with them.
I've learned so much from other people through this process. From like when we started 2 years ago, I've met so many people. I've gained so many mentors who are like willing to teach me stuff. I've learned from even the other people that I've been working. It's not just me working on KC7. We have a whole team of volunteers who
Hmm.
love this stuff, and I've learned so much from them. For example, I was trying to model out what lateral movement is. You think you know something until you have to build it, and I'm like, yeah, I know what that is, and I try to build it, and I'm like, maybe I don't know what that is. And then I have to go and have to humbly ask someone, can you like teach me this? I have to go and have to research it. So I personally get to learn a lot.
Hmm.
But what I've also seen in the process is that you get a lot of people who play the game, and then we have this community that builds around it. They're like, wait, these free how are these resources free? Like, how does this happen? And we're like, it's just a circle, like you said, right? You get something out of it, and then what we ask is that you put some back into it. And so we have a lot of people who help out other people who are also playing in the game. We have volunteers who have played the game before, and now they turn around and they build the new versions of the game so that somebody else can get something out of it, which is how we've kept it going for 2 years at no cost to folks. And we also have some very cool stories as well of what happens to volunteers when they play this silly little game a little bit too much.
What happens to them?
Yeah, one of the coolest stories, we went to Sands near the Cyber, and there was a watchmaker in LA. And I was on stage, I was talking smack. I always talk smack. I love talking smack about KC7. I'll go on there, I'll say some wild things. And one of the things I said is, if you play this game enough, you will get so good at understanding intrusions that you will baffle the mind of, you will get an interview one day and you will amaze your interviewer, and they will have no idea how it is that you know the things that you know and that you can do my job. And so there's this watchmaker in LA. And most people don't take me, they don't take my word for it. They're like, yeah, sure, dude, whatever. Um, and people will hear this right now and they won't take my word for it. I'm like, okay, sure. But the one guy did take my word for it. And so he went and he played the game, and he was not the best at it, but he was persistent. And so we'd have a competition. He'd fall in somewhere around the middle, and then everybody would go home and shut it down. And then he would stay and he would finish the entire thing. And he did it over and over and over again for months, until he would just go back and finish every last question that we have available on the platform. And then afterwards, he would even go and explore the data and try to understand, what the connections are that he might have missed, or like how the game works independent of the questions that we're providing. And he did that for a year and a half, ran out of questions. We got him to start building the questions for everyone else. And then after a year and a half, this guy who never worked a day in his life in cybersecurity, who didn't have a college degree, got his first job at a senior level at Microsoft on one of the best threat hunting teams in the world, right? Just a wild story. Granted, a lot of it was his work ethic. He worked like no one you've ever seen before. But it was this idea of that someone that you would have never expected to be good at this thing based on his background, that you maybe would have written off from the jump. Turns out that he has like an innate skill that makes him really good at this. And just his personal, work ethic and the way his mind works and his interests just lined up with this like random industry, like way out there in a corner that he may have never even considered before. And so now Jimmy's doing amazing, and people meet him and they're like, oh, you've been working in the industry for like 10 years, right? It's like, nah, bro, I've been playing this game for about a year and a half, and that's all I did.
Wow.
So it's a crazy story.
I just recently met someone who was working at a smoke shop. Like, last place that you'd expect a cybersecurity practitioner or a data engineer. He was working over there, and he was saying that during his downtime, he was just reading AI. He was on Twitter Spaces, reading blogs. And I got to meet him recently. His AI chops are ridiculous. He just got his first senior level role with no experience, so little experience actually, that I'm surprised someone had found him and knew that he was the right fit. How did Microsoft find this person, and why would they spend time interviewing someone for a senior level position that doesn't have any experience?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things he did really well was he was good at networking, and he was good at stepping out of his comfort zone. And we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and I would talk to him. I said, hey, don't let any notions about what you should or shouldn't be doing hold you back. And so before he ever landed his role, he was applying to speak at conferences left, right, and center.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So Jimmy had spoken at about 5 conferences. He had given about 5 conference talks before he ever had a job. And he would just share his story. He said, I am not even in the industry yet, but I have had such a good time, and I've found such a gem playing this game that I want to already share it with somebody else, even though I don't have a job yet. And then he would just go above and beyond and just like networking with folks and keeping connections and talking with people, that it was a no-brainer, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time he met the folks at Microsoft, I said, you know what, this guy's legit. There was no doubt. I mean, when he did his interviews, he did really well, right? There was no doubt that he was the guy, because he didn't let those preconceived notions stop him.
Powerful. A lot of people describe imposter syndrome as imposter syndrome, but I look at it as, I'm just afraid of not being the smartest person in the room. I think that is totally a normal thing to be worried about. I think everybody worries about that, especially when they're new at something, trying to get good at it and getting evaluated for how they perform. But sounds like this person just knew that they weren't an imposter. Like, I like this game, I like this industry, I'm here for it. And
Yeah.
the networking thing is huge, especially like just putting yourself out there. That's a crazy awesome thing that you did.
Yeah. And I mean, he knows more people than I do, ironically. He ends up introducing me to people. I'm like, how do you already know everyone? And it's such a powerful tool. But the other thing was he wasn't afraid to fail. And sometimes, even personally, we try to do things that are in our comfort zone. We're like, I don't want to do that because I might not be good at that. And he was like, you know what? I want to do this. And if I fail, that's okay. And so he got a lot of rejections before he got his acceptance. He went to a lot of job interviews where people said, I think this guy's bluffing. I don't know if he's actually, like, his story seems way too out there for that to be true. But then
Yeah,
he kept going, right? And he
exactly.
kept trying and he failed and he tried and over again until he got that success. And so I would commend him that he kept going no matter what. And that's something that I'm still trying to learn from him, to be honest.
Yeah, one of my very close friends says, uh, I could take 100 no's as long as I get one yes. And
Just need one.
exactly, and that's the same for if you're in sales. Like, all you need is one sale. If you're creating a game, all you need is one user, or you need to play it yourself to figure
Yeah.
out what are people going to like about it. What do I like about it? And that's the pursuit of just growth and discovery. I think when you have that mindset, then you could still fail, but it's not quite the same. The failing is just giving up rather than like getting rejected.
And even with making KC7, we've had so many failures. But sometimes we actually seek the failures, right? Because every time you hit that wall, you're learning something new. That's a new data point that you're going to get. And then you're like, okay, I should do more of this. I should not do more of this. And even when we create new games, I always try to push. We should always do something different. And when you do something different, it increases the chance that you're going to fail or look stupid or it's not going to work as clean. But you're going to learn, okay, I should do more of this or I should not do more of this. And so we've had like so many iterations and like so many branches of like things that we've tried and gone back, or like things that we've tried and we're like, hey, that worked really well. Let's do that again. And so, just from a product design perspective, it's not like KC7 wasn't born overnight in the shape that it was. It was something that was really shaped by all the people who played it over thousands of people who shaped it over time and said, hey, you guys do this really well, but this thing that you're doing really sucks. Can you stop doing that? Or can you do more of this? And we're like, yeah, sure. And so over time, it looks like, you're super bright and you just kind of thought about all these things all at once and you magically made it. But really, it's just like a lot of like banging against the wall and making mistakes and failing and learning and letting people teach you.
Where are you hoping to see the foundation go next?
We're trying to get to as many people as possible. We have this free tool and we're trying to keep it free for as long. Well, if I have it my way, it'll be free forever. That we think can continue to change lives and continue to change the cybersecurity industry. I think we're stronger as an industry when we have more voices in the room. And if we can give more people opportunity to get in this field or realize it's for them, there's going to be a lot more competition. Granted, it's going to make it harder for me to keep my job, right? Because now I got all these other people who know how to do the thing that I'm doing, but that's okay. I don't think hackers are going anywhere soon. If you read the news, there's always something every other day. And so we have to figure out how to get better as defenders, how to get better as a blue team. And that means that we need a little bit of fire under our butt.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we get that by having more people in the room who think differently, who bring different things to the table. And so KC7, I think, is just the door for all these new people, hopefully millions of people in the future, who can step into the room and say, hey, I see what y'all are doing. Here's a different way that you might be able to do that. Here's how you might do that a little bit better.
There's a lot of people that listen to this show that are mentors, and they're always getting asked, like, what resources should I be learning about? They'll ask, some of our listeners, some of our guests like yourself. For anyone that is interested in giving a recommendation for KC7 and recommending people to start there, what is the best way to get started if you or someone that doesn't have any experience in the space?
We built KC7 exactly so people can answer that question. I used to get that question all the time. I always say you need three things. You need a laptop, an internet connection, and you need to know how to read. And if you can do those three things and you have 30 minutes on your hand, you can play KC7 and at least do the easy modules, get a feel for what it's like. And usually once you do that, it's usually a trap, and then you spend hours and hours and hours doing it. I'm sorry in advance. I apologize. But it is, I would highly recommend to anyone, even if you aren't technical, even if you don't think of yourself as a technical cybersecurity person, it's made to be super easy and super approachable. And we promise that you will be surprised what it's like. And that's what always gets people, is they think it is one thing. And once they try it, they are very shocked by how accessible it is. And that is the recurring theme for this game.
I love it. I love what you're building. I love what you're doing. I'm glad that I was able to bring you on the show to spread the word. For anyone that hasn't already heard of KC7, be sure to check them out at kc7cyber.com. Simeon, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day, not developing the game, but talking to me and our audience. Really appreciate you. And with that, we will see everyone next time.